Then I saw it. Something entered the room. I saw the door open, never heard footsteps. It was simply there, moving with intent, crossing the floor towards my bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly.
Hello. These stories happened in Mexico. One is about sleep paralysis, and the other is kind of a cult in the night. There's a lot of confusion in both of these stories, but be careful of joining these type of cults. You don't know if you're the next sacrifice. Or probably this might just be a story for some of you. But if you don't have enough respect for it, it might become your next reality. Let's begin with our program, What Crawls in the Nights. At the beginning of last year, I had the opportunity to teach a series of courses at the Technological Institute in Ciudad Cerdán, Puebla. The person who hired me arranged for me to stay at a small hotel called La Fuente. The first 2 days passed without incident. Nothing felt out of place. The room was quiet, clean, and remarkable. The kind of place you forget the moment you leave it. By the third day, I was comfortable enough to fall asleep quickly. That's when it happened. I don't know exactly the time I woke up, only that I was suddenly aware of the room. Not in a dreamlike way, but with the sharp clarity of being fully conscious. I knew where everything was: the bed, the door, the light switch to my left. It felt as though I had spent years in that room instead of just a few nights. Then I saw it. Something entered the room. I saw the door open, never heard footsteps. It was simply there, moving with intent, crossing the floor towards my bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly. Whatever it was reached the foot of the bed and began to climb, slowly, deliberately, up my legs. I could feel the weight, the pressure, even though I couldn't see its face. The darkness felt thicker, heavier, as if it were pressing down on me. Panicked, I forced myself to turn my head to the left, straining with everything I had to reach the light switch. My arm felt distant, unresponsive, like it didn't belong to me anymore. The moment my fingers brushed the switch, I woke up. I was sitting upright, heart pounding, the room exactly as it should be. The light was off, nothing was there, but the fear didn't fade away. For something that was supposedly a dream, because it wasn't sleep paralysis, not really. It felt disturbingly real, too real, the kind of real that doesn't dissolve in daylight. The next day, I told the professors I was teaching with, and by then we had grown friendly, comfortable enough to share stories like that. I expected laughter, skepticism. Instead, the room went quiet. They told me the hotel used to be an old ranch. According to them, and later confirmed by the hotel staff, a military man once lived there. The story goes that he discovered his wife having an affair with one of the workers. As punishment, he decapitated them and displayed their heads on the iron bars of a window. I didn't verify the story myself. I didn't want to. Too many people told it the same exact way. After that, I learned the hotel had other issues, you may say. Objects moving on their own, chairs and rocking chairs shifting during the night, sounds echoing through the halls when no one else was awake. Not La Llorona, something quieter, something closer. I finished my courses 2 days later and left as soon as I could. I should mention that after that night, I slept with the lights on until morning every night. I didn't experience anything else, but I also didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that familiar certainty that something was standing at the foot of the bed, waiting, looking at me. Somehow, that felt even worse than seeing it. Well, guys, this is one story out of two. I'm gonna start with the second one. As I said, I'm gonna start doing Mexican ghost stories to, well, show you guys a little bit of our culture and some ghosts that probably only appear in Mexico. Let's begin with our second story of the night. I used to live in an area I would describe as relatively quiet. A few years ago, I had a strange experience in the early morning hours. I've worked night shift for years, and this particular day I was heading home with a coworker. He dropped me off at a point fairly close to my house and along his usual route. But from the moment I got out of the car, I felt like I was being watched. I was standing on the main avenue, about one street away from a gas station. To get home, I had to cross the avenue and then walk through a couple of streets, one of which is entirely made up of parks. Public lighting in that area usually doesn't work, so when you cross, the nearest visible light is one street ahead. There's a small school there that has its own exterior lights because of the lighting issues. At the same distance, on the opposite side, the brightest light normally comes from a house where a man opens his window around 5:30 to 6 a.m. to sell juices, sandwiches, and tortas. For some reason, that day, the man hadn't opened early. Since there wasn't much light, I stayed where I was, facing the park. On one side, there are covered benches, and on the other side of the street, there's a basketball court surrounded by trees. I felt like something was watching me from the court. I stood there for a long time, staring at it, thinking I could see shadows moving, shapes that looked like people wearing hoodies or sweatshirts. You couldn't make out hairstyles, and the silhouettes all looked pretty much the same. After waiting about half an hour, watching from where I stood, I noticed the shadows moving farther and farther away, standing more upright instead of crouching. I waited a few more minutes, and shortly after that, I saw the light turn on in the window of the man who sells juices. With that light as a reference point, I grabbed my keys and crossed the park, sticking to the side opposite to the basketball court. When I got home, I told a family member what happened and went to sleep. Around noon, I was woken up in alarm. when they showed me one of those sensational local tabloids. The headline said that a burned body had been found on the basketball court. At that point, due to the extent of the burns, they didn't know whether the victim was a male or female. Looking back, I realized I could have taken a detour and gone through different streets. But part of me didn't want to turn my back on the court, and I felt far enough away and safe enough I could run if necessary. Additionally, that same week, my family talked about what I had seen and what had happened. Apparently, a friend of my cousin told a very similar story. He said that on that same night, he witnessed someone being burned on the court. In his vision, he was drunk and heading home from a party, but since it was so late, there was no public transportation. He decided to sleep in the park, on the opposite side from where I had been. There's a section of that block where some abandoned vehicles have been left for years. Since they had no doors, he climbed into a van that was parked with its back facing the basketball court and the front facing a small soccer field. At some point during the early morning, he heard screams or moaning in his dreams and started to wake up, thinking it was a couple who had gone to the park. He looked out through one of the van's windows and saw what was happening. He saw the silhouettes surrounding the victim. He doesn't know, and neither do I, whether he screamed when he saw it, but he started making noise and says he heard them shouting that they should go after him.
Let's go, let's get next.
Yeah,
Run
get him.
You're next.
As soon as he got out, he ran several blocks along the avenue until he reached the highway. And from there, he figured out how to get home. It's not exactly a ghost story, but it's still deeply unsettling to witness something so graphic happening so close to where you live, especially in an area where almost nothing ever happens, and which is relatively small. Well guys, that was today's video. Hope you guys liked it. Please consider giving it a thumbs up, and if you really like the content, subscribe if you want to watch more, because I'm going to keep uploading. Remember guys, don't ignore the sounds tonight. You've already awakened it. Good night, and don't let the bed bugs bite.